I would like to ask us to play a little game. I'm going to name a few names, and I just want you to think in your mind, not out loud, I'm not trying to get fired, about what they have in common. Elon Musk, Christy Nome, Jeff Bezos. All right. I'm going to tell you what I think they have in common. Well, two things that I think they have in common. The first, I think it's fair to say these are both people who have built up their lives, careers, fortunes by harming other people. Fair enough? Whether that's exploiting workers or building AI data centers that contribute to environmental racism or hunting down our immigrant neighbors, they've harmed a lot of people. Thing number two they have in common. They are not people I would like to get dinner with. Not in their home, not in my home, not at Panera Bread, not at the fanciest establishment in all of Copley Square. But according to today's text, it seemed that Jesus might, maybe, slightly disagree with me, perhaps. And I give all those qualifiers, recognizing that I'm doing the same thing I do when I'm trying to trick my dog into taking his medicine, which is putting it in a little piece of chicken and hoping that he doesn't spit the pill out. But, I mean, let's be honest. Jesus disagrees with me. And you might be thinking, well, those people are really bad, and I don't like the IRS, but they're not that bad. Jesus was just eating with tax collectors. But the thing we have to understand about tax collectors in this period is that people truly saw them as traitors, and with good reason. You see, Jesus' community was living under an occupation. The Roman Empire had come in, and they sent in their people to govern as they saw fit. But those hoity-toity governors were not going to be the ones pounding on people's doors and demanding taxes to an emperor far, far away. So they hired people from the local population who were willing to do that to their neighbors. Sometimes those people even hired other people so that they didn't have to be the ones knocking on the doors and demanding the taxes. And in this process, at every step of the way, these tax collectors were allowed to add a little or a lot to the amount that Rome required to be sent back. Basically, this is how they paid themselves. If Rome wanted $5, I could demand $20, and you had to give it to me. So these tax collectors, they weren't just doing a government job that we didn't like. They were stealing from their neighbors and giving what they stole to the occupiers. Maybe I'm a bad person, but I almost understand why the Pharisees called them scum. Okay, no one's kicked me out yet. That's great. But really, they were traitors. And Jesus chose to eat with them. Jesus called one of them and said, "Give up everything and follow me." And he did. So okay, maybe. If you have a denounced former tax collector, maybe that could be good for your movement that's all about love and inclusion and healing. But then he goes to this dinner party with a whole crew of them. And I don't see anything in the text saying that any of them were reformed. And there's other people there who the religious leaders at the time say are scum or sinners, depending on your translation. We don't know why. Maybe they are also powerful, exploitative government officials. Maybe they're impure or considered impure for some other reason. their diet, their sexual practice, their bodies, their chronic illnesses, all things that would keep you out of religious life in this period. But no matter what, Jesus is there and he's eating with them. An act that builds community, an act that associates you with someone. And so again, I might understand why the Pharisees say, "Why do you eat with these people?" "Mary, why are you at dinner with Kristi Noam?" Who else can I pick on? "Paul, why are you at dinner with Elon Musk?" Answer me. Well, Jesus says, because they need me. And I think I can get behind that. What he doesn't say, but I think we should also note, is that he was invited. You see, Jesus didn't set the guest list for this little occasion. So I take some comfort in believing that perhaps these tax collectors and other folks were not his top number one choice of dinner guest. If he were playing a game of name 3 people who anywhere in history who you wish you could invite for dinner, hopefully it's not tax collector, tax collector, tax collector. But given the invitation, he decides to show up with no guarantee that anything he says is going to change anyone's mind. But one example of a guy who heard Jesus and listened. I think it's really, really hard when we're faced with people who cause harm to stay in community with them and believe that they might change. And I want to be clear that there's times when it's just not safe for us to do that, right? There's just times when maybe I'm not the person who needs to do that, but maybe Bryce is, because they'll listen to the guy more than me. I mean, who knows? Bryce seems skeptical. But then there's times where accepting the invitation and not counting someone out can be powerful. And so as not to pick on anybody else in the room, I'll pick on myself. I was raised in Tennessee. I was raised to be a conservative, fundamentalist Christian, to hate queer people. If you know me, you know how that one worked out, not the way they planned. If someone had said, "Oh no, I'm not going to even try with that one," I could very well still be there. But instead, I had friends who sat with me at the cafeteria table in high school, at lunch. And when I had a tract that was meant to convert them, they said, "Let's look at this newspaper article." They said, "Let's talk about why the things that your beloved mother told you might be wrong." And after a lot of trying, they got through. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to work, because we don't know that it will. I'm also not saying that I was causing the level of harm that, say, a Kristi Noam or a Jeff Bezos was. But even in small ways, we all have an opportunity to accept the invitation, to try to be agents of healing for those who have been hurt, and maybe even for those who have been doing the hurting but could turn their act around. When I think about that table that night, I wonder if it's not possible that some of those other quote-unquote scum were actually, as I said, those who were impure for other reasons. People who were on the outskirts of society, who maybe even had been victims of the tax collectors, but who, given the invite, said, "Yeah, I'll take the free food," and discovered that actually this person was repenting. I don't think us being in our silo is going to save us. I think us calling for repentance and being willing when we can to talk people through the process just might. And so I'd like you to think about who's the one person. The one person who you can take a deep breath and spend 5 minutes talking to them. And then feel real good about that and put your little seed bomb in the lovometer because you did something good this week. And then can you do 5 minutes next week and 5 minutes the next? People might say to you, like they said to Jesus, why are you having dinner with them? But hopefully, someday some of those people will open their table wider than we ever could have imagined. May it be so. Thanks be to God.